How's it going, guys? Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Phil Talk Sports Podcast. Recording this on a rainy Thursday night. Thursday night football is going on. Baseball playoffs are happening. And me and Nick decided what a better night to just talk some sports than right here, right now. So good evening, Nick. How's it going, man?
Pretty good, man. I'm somber about the Dodgers, of course, here in LA. And then the second thing, you know what? I just wanted to make sure everybody felt right off the jump here. When I was looking through the NFL, Sunday games, and I saw that incredible performance from Baltimore's Lamar Jackson. 0 touchdowns, 2 turnovers, right? Completed 55% of his passes. I thought, this might be the greatest passing performance I've seen in a game all year. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I guess if you're, pro football focused, they would agree with you, right? Because I still to this day don't really know how they, calculate everything. But apparently that is the case so far with the NFL season, that a guy with no touchdowns and 2 turnovers can have the best quarterback game of the year. So far be it for me to argue with them, I guess.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. But you mentioned baseball. That's in full swing right now, and you admittedly are not a hardcore any team necessarily, but I know you are right in the middle of Dodger country, so I'm sure you are seeing people just walk around with a stunned look on their face to not only lose after a historic regular season, not only to get swept, but to get swept by the freaking Diamondbacks of all teams, which I don't claim to know a whole lot about them, but like – this has been a really interesting postseason so far. My Phillies are slugging it out with the Braves right now, and you might be asking yourself, Phil, why are you trying to podcast in the middle of a Phillies game? Well, I can't watch it right now because my YouTube TV doesn't let me watch TBS because Braves are technically the local team, and it's better to do this than just refresh my phone every 3 seconds. So this is me trying to positively spend some other time instead of sweating over. I am going to check it periodically here on my phone more than likely, but I wanted to do something else instead of just stare at my phone for a 3-hour baseball game.
Yeah, that's the watching sports in 2023, man. I mean, by 2033, you need to have 15 different apps, maybe a couple of different TVs. I don't know. Who knows what happens in the future, but for right now, it's getting pretty crazy. I mean, that's my story with Thursday Night Football tonight. I would have been down to see Patrick Mahomes, but, then I got to figure out my login for Amazon. It's just too much.
I mean, I have Amazon Prime, so that isn't a huge deal for me, but I never remember that that's what it's on Thursdays. I'll always look, ESPN is, and I'll find them. Oh, yeah, that's right. It's only on. So it doesn't bother me as much as the average person. Maybe in a year or two, I'll finally remember that it's there. It does give it its own unique feel. Like it makes it feel a little different. If they want Thursday night games to matter, now that all these teams are bringing back their retro jerseys, make the Thursday night football game a throwback Thursday. Let everybody wear their retros. No one will ever miss a Thursday game again. So we're 3 minutes in, and I just fixed Thursday night football. I am cooking today, Nick.
You are cooking. That's what we constructively bring criticism here. And, we don't quite bring as much criticism as like a Steve Smith. We might get to that later in the show. But,
sure, yeah.
We try to be constructive here.
We do. And talking about constructive, let's start with a team that has everybody talking, that's had their good and had their bad so far this year. We are just about – this is good and bad news, Nick. We're almost at the halfway point of the college football regular season already. I know it feels like it just started, but we are 6 games in for most teams. A couple people played last night. Some people are playing right now. But most teams have played at least 6. And Coach Prime and Colorado sit at 4-2. And the last time we spoke, I put 4 wins as their basement, and I picked 6 wins as their ceiling. So that doesn't leave me a whole lot of room to go with 6 more games to go. But before we talk about what's ahead of them, let's talk about what they've already done. We spoke when they were 2-0. We knew they were going to have a really rough next 2 games, as they did. I'm sorry, they started 3-0, actually. But the first game, the Oregon game, was just about what we expected. And about halfway through the USC game, something clicked, and they gave the Trojans everything they could handle. I'm sure you watched that game, maybe even a little closer than me, being that it was USC. But they, I don't know, at one point, it was like their game to lose. Like they went from, lucky to be on the field with them, that like 1 or 2 mental mistakes, they could have actually stolen that game. And that, of course, led to, their game right after that, where your Arizona State Sun Devils gave them all they can handle, but they did come out with a win. And sitting at 4-2, what's your opinion of them through 6 games?
First of all, man, I mean, you really are like a Russell Wilson back in Seattle. All right. Quietly cooking here because I did, 2 games in, I was thinking Phil might have gotten Colorado really wrong. But, then everything, the world kind of, everything aligns at the end and people start realizing maybe TCU wasn't a playoff contender again this year. Maybe the moral victory against Colorado State was actually a little bit of a what's the word? A foreshadowing to what they actually are, where
Right.
they needed all sorts of magic late from Shooter Sanders just to win that game. And then obviously with Travis Hunter going down with the injury, that was huge. And then you referenced
Which
the
real quick,
USC.
can we talk about that Hunter thing for a second? So the Colorado State player that injured him, right? We all saw the stories that he got death threats and stuff. I
Yep,
don't know if you saw this because this was not covered with the level that it needed to be covered. He and I should remember the Colorado State kid's name. They did like a sit down on social media and like said like,
that's
no, we're
right.
good. You were just being a football player. Like emotions got hot. We were in the heat of battle, and like it's the most mature thing I've ever seen, maybe ever on television. And it was a 19-year-old that did it. And
Yeah.
in this social media world that guys are getting death threats. I don't know if you heard the story about the reporter asked James Franklin a weird question, and now he's getting death threats by the Penn State faithful. To live in a world like that and to see that, one, I'm upset that it doesn't get as much press as it should have. That should have been everywhere. So good up to them. That's an extra W for them. Whatever their record is at the end of the year, the fact that they pulled that off, throw another one on there. But please continue.
The USC thing was a little deceiving, in my opinion. Like, granted, the fourth quarter numbers look incredible, but part of that was a soft USC defense and Colorado playing not, I don't even know what the word is. The clock management was so horrible. They were running the ball with like 3, 4 minutes left. The Norv Turner late game offense, where I'm like, you basically are putting yourself in a position where you have like a 5% chance to win. And I'm of the mindset I'm going for broke, shooting deep passes when you're down 2 scores with 3, 4 minutes left. They made sure they were in a position to score with a minute to go out of timeouts. That was perplexing to me. For folks who watch the game, they understand. Overall, Colorado has become exactly, I'd say, what we thought they were, where they would be a good amount better than the 1-win team they had last year, of course, with all the different guys. But now they're at the point of the year where this is where we believe they would have a losing record almost indefinitely because their schedule is incredible. And like I said last time, it sure would be a shame if the Pac-12 bolted next year because they have the most incredible conference. Of course, they finally do have
They
a
put it
conference
together.
that's actually playoff legitimate now. And for
Yeah.
years, we were saying, this is kind of like a bye week for Georgia or Bama, whoever plays them in the playoff. So if they even make the playoff.
Right.
So Colorado's become almost exactly what we thought they were. They're 4-2, but they played by far and away the easier part of their schedule, with the exception of USC. Now it gets real, and they play 4 of their final 5 against ranked top 20 programs. If they win one of those, that would be a huge win for them. But in general, I can talk. I can talk negatively about them now. Colorado's in a solid direction, and shout out to
Absolutely.
Deion Sanders. I mean, if you or me were to join a program, even with all those transfers and talent, I mean, would we pull out a couple wins? This guy's just getting his feet wet, understanding what it's like to move around Boulder, and he's already built a winner there. Shout out to Deion Sanders, who seems to, wherever he goes, find some magic in coaching, playing, or anything else he does.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I put it out there already. 4 wins basement, 6 wins ceiling. Like, I'm not worried about being wrong on that. If they win 7, God forbid they win 8, like it's not gonna affect my day. I think that's one of the things I pride myself on this show is I don't mind being wrong. I throw the opinion out there. I feel like I got a decent track record, but it's not always going to be true. But you look at it from a glance. You mentioned 4 of the last 5, or I'm sorry, including this week, 4 of the last 6 are ranked opponents. The only game they've played win-loss wise, because I didn't expect them to play USC that close. I didn't expect Oregon to be quite that much of a runaway either. So you can even those out. The only game that surprised me so far is TCU. And that's our fault for not understanding how different that team is than was in the national championship. And I'm saying You, me, America, College Game Day,
Yeah.
everybody.
I mean, their
So
drop off was pretty, even
yeah,
with all the transfers and all the
right.
guys graduating, that still was a pretty unprecedented difference.
So aside from the TCU game, I knew they were going to beat Nebraska. Nebraska doesn't beat anybody. Colorado State is a rival that Dion would have done anything to beat. I did not expect that to be the instant classic it was. And then, like, again, no disrespect to your alma mater. Like, that's the game I could see them getting on the road, was going to get them a lot of, some juice going. They're about to play Stanford. Stanford's not particularly good. No offense to Hank, because his Arizona Wildcats also gave USC all they could handle this past week. That's the game they can probably get. And then if they lose the other 4 against ranked opponents, even if they're close, that puts them right at 6-6. So let's say they steal one against Washington State or Oregon State. I feel like those are easier games than UCLA and Utah. Can we agree on that?
Yeah.
So if they win one of those 2, yeah, maybe they get 7 wins. If they really catch fire, maybe they beat both of those. They just lose a heartbreakers to UCLA and Utah, and then they got 8 wins. And that would be like, I built the ceiling already. I'm building like a basement on top of the ceiling, and that would be 8 wins, I guess. But like, I have them at 6. Basically, if all these games go chalk, that puts them right at 6-6. So again, not that I'm afraid about being wrong, but I still feel pretty decent about those picks.
But, just remember after 2 games, even after the TCU game, the narrative, and that it wasn't just fans, they were ranked 18th in the country
Right.
after that one win. So a lot of folks were looking at this team, maybe, the conversation was maybe actually winning the Pac 12, or at least, going to the Pac 12 title or runner up or whatever. So the fact that they were even in those conversations tells you that people got a little too infatuated about Colorado, because after one game, if anybody, pulls off an upset, I didn't hear that energy after Texas beat Alabama. But all of a sudden, when, Colorado wins against TCU, the world wants to crown Dion as an instant title winner. We were telling you for the last 2 months, this stuff takes time, even with all the transfers.
I mean, you mentioned the future. In a year, they're moving to the Big 12. They're about to be our problem, and UCF is having enough growing pains moving to the Big 12 right now. So, like,
yeah,
this is and I think most people that thought like Colorado's going to take some time, they're talking about this year. They're not saying this is never going to work. It's working already. In
right.
year 2, 3, or 4, you may really have something, especially when the playoff expands. And while that's not the done deal that it was a couple months ago, we are going to get some form of that. So whatever it comes out to, they can be I'll say this though, like if Colorado beats the 2 teams that we talked about and they sneak a random, they're going to be the first 7-5 team to be like ranked in the top 25. They're going to like sneak them into at number 25. That way, when they play their bowl game, they'll have that number in it, because ESPN loves to put numbers next. That's the only reason. If you remember back in our day, teams weren't ranked until the BCS came out around week like 7 or 8. But they started doing the coaches poll rankings before it. Why? Because if you see little numbers next to teams on the TV guide,
People
it makes
go,
people
"Oh
want to
yeah,
tune
I
in.
gotta watch that."
So that explains why. And I didn't know this. This is a little bit before my time. The rankings used to only be 20. They added the extra
Really?
5 in like the late 80s, early 90s. So
And now
again,
you
just
have receiving votes, so you can look down the list and like, oh,
yeah,
we're ranked 38th.
yeah. I don't mind. I
So,
don't mind receiving votes though. That doesn't really bother me. What do you think?
I
I don't
mean,
mind seeing
no,
that.
I'm just, I'm not all the way over, but I'm towards the thought that people are having of like, why don't we wait like a month and
Yeah.
then like that's the vibe of the college football playoff rankings. But let's just wait a little bit so that way, because clearly like half of the top 25 in the preseason was wrong.
Immediately falls off. Yeah.
Exactly.
So how about this? I would say, like, granted, a lot of the non-conference play is these like pay for games and beating FCS. But if you get a general ranking in week 3 or 4 when conference play starts, then you at least have you've at least seen this iteration of the team play in the year that you're ranking them for. Because we've seen like the TCUs, they're not 17th in anything. So that's what they were when they started the year. So I think if you do the rankings, like I said, week 3, week 4, right as conference play starts, we have a general idea. It's like, look, I know they haven't played anybody, but they look way better playing nobodies than this team looks playing nobodies. And at least you're comparing it in that sense.
Yeah, and I'm also of the mindset, since we love coming up with our big ideas, but not harebrained ideas. These are things that people have talked about.
Yeah.
Just having a schedule like the NFL, where if you place third in your conference, why don't you play the third team in another conference instead of your non-conference schedule being, Timbuktu State,
Mm,
half the time? And it is hilarious how these SEC programs point the finger. I can't believe Kirby Smart scheduled freaking, Joe Blow Tech. And it's like, dude, every one of you are doing the same thing. And in fact, at this point, without much college football intervention, you'd be silly not to schedule these joke programs. So, shout out to Colorado, by the way, to round out our Colorado talk, that they
mhm.
didn't do that. They scheduled TCU and their crosstown rival, and that always kind of brings a little weird, pulls teams together. Colorado State, a big underdog, came up for that game. So,
Right. And
Deion
Nebraska.
Sanders said, yes, year one, with all these different transfers, we're going to kind of need a month to get going. I don't care. I'm
Yeah.
scheduling some good opponents to get us ready. I really love that, strategy. Don't love all the training camp stuff. Don't love all the, they are a loud football team, but in general, I love their mentality. We're going to win, and we're going to win now. We don't care that none of you believe, in us. I mean, a
To
lot
be
of people do, but in their mind, nobody believes in them.
to be fair, and not that I don't mind giving Dion credit for things. I'm pretty sure a lot of these games would have been scheduled before he got there, but it did work out in the sense that like we're not
fair.
hiding from nobody.
Yeah.
And as far as those cupcake games go, because we understand how college football works, some of these FCS teams, they need that game to fund their program for the year. So I don't mind you doing it, but you get one. If you schedule more than one, because there is a rule, if you schedule more than one, you need 7 wins to be bowl eligible. Doesn't usually affect the teams that do it, because like Georgia's going to get to 7 wins anyway. Doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So like,
and if they get below 7, they got bigger problems.
bigger problems than that. Yeah. So like, I'll give you the one. I never care if in week 1 or 2, or in some cases like Florida State tends to save theirs for the week before they play Florida, and or Miami, one of the two. So like, you get one. Where you put them in the schedule is up to you. Whatever benefits you. Most people like it game 1, right? You get to ease into the season. Some people put it right before arrival. That also makes sense. So whatever you do with your one is fine. But yeah, if you do more than one, to quote Theo Vaughn, like, I'm not judging you, but everyone else is gonna, like,
Yeah.
don't be surprised when the backlash comes,
It's just hilarious how people do it, and then they go, I can't believe it, right?
Yeah.
Nick Saban is talking trash to Kirby Smart because he scheduled a couple of cupcakes. Hilarious. Totally hilarious.
Absolutely. Just like, again, you got to understand how the league works, but even once you do, like, there's a limit to what is there rare instances that you can play to? Sure. But if you're doing it every year, we're pointing the finger at you. We just are.
Yeah. If they make the bowl game, that would be incredible. But I think next year, as long as Shadur might come back, we'll have to see about that.
Yeah.
And Deion, getting an extra year at those guys. I think next year's the year we could talk about Colorado being a 9-10 win team, maybe competing for Pac-12, but not this year. No matter what pixie dust they pull together, there's just no way that they can get in that conversation this year.
So Deion's made it sound like it's not even a conversation that they're coming back. That's how he's made it sound. But things can change at the drop of a hat. That's life. But the thing of it now, you mentioned like next year's the 9-10 win, like they'll get the decently big bowl game. This year, it don't matter what bowl they get. That'll be the bowl to watch. Like where they go is the party. They could get the Dollar General Bowl, and it'll be the most watched Dollar General Bowl in the history of Dollar General Bowls. This year, it doesn't matter. You get there, you win a trophy. It don't even matter which trophy it is, right? It's just where they go, the party's going to follow. So that should be the goal this year. And
there might actually be a non-New Year's Six that actually sells out. That'd be kind of
right. Exactly. It reminds me of last year. People joke on it, and I get it. Like Oklahoma played Florida State in the Cheez-It Bowl. Is it a little goofy? Yes, but that game sold out. That was the best. That was the like highest attended non-New Year's Six game of the year. And like, I don't care if they're a little goofy like that. Like to me, the Cheez-It Bowl, which is now the Pop-Tart Bowl, by the way. They kind of run the perfect line of like, yes, we're having fun with this, but once the whistle blows, like it's 2 great football teams we're seeing here. So like, I want to see more of that. Like when UCF got to play Florida in the Gasparilla Bowl that same year, South Carolina played North Carolina. They barely play anymore. That was cool. Like that's the kind of stuff we need in bowl games for sure.
Yeah, San Diego State last year played in the Hawaii Bowl. Wow, creative. Oh
See,
my
I want
gosh.
that. I want that to be a bigger deal. The fact that you can go
Yeah.
to Hawaii to play football, like it's almost funny that that's a lower tier bowl because it's usually the programs that like can't really afford to get everybody out there. Like back
Yeah.
in the early 2000s, UCF played in it a few times, and like it almost wasn't worth it because like the money that it takes to get out there. If you took like a Florida State Oklahoma type level matchup, a South Carolina North Carolina matchup, and let them go play in Hawaii, to me that's a huge deal. You
It
know, so
is.
I think a game like that needs to almost be in the higher tier of the bowl games. But that's I've always felt that way because like, would you rather play in Hawaii or Shreveport, Louisiana? You know, when it
Hey,
comes
no,
to
no,
these bowl
no.
games,
Nothing personal about
nothing, no,
Shreveport, Louisiana. All
nothing
right.
personal,
If
Shreveport. But I'm just
if
comparing
they
the two.
could compete for the volleyball national championships, Hawaii can recruit for, because they play football in the Mountain West, which who
Mhm.
knows what that'll be next year. And then
Right.
they play in the Big West Conference for basketball, which is one of the lowest conferences in the country. It's like, I can't believe they can't recruit 4 or 5 basketball players that can compete with, even like the fifth best California school or something like that. I don't know, but